In this video, we will give you an introduction to 3D fabric. In order to create a 3D garment, 3D fabric is one of the key elements needed. 3D fabric imitates our real-life physical fabric by capturing two main components. The first component is fabric physics. The physics are captured by the fabric analyzer by Browseware, or Fab machine. The Fab machine captures physical properties such as mass, thickness, bend, and stretch. These properties control the accuracy of the fabric drape on our avatar in our 3D window. The second component is our fabric texture image. There are multiple ways to capture the fabric texture image in related maps. One example is the Visu X-Tex technology. Their scanner and software captures and processes images based on physical material information. These seamless images are then combined with our fabric physics to give us a 3D fabric. 3D fabrics look and drape just like the fabric in your home, office, or showroom. When we go into vStitcher, we have a Browseware Cloud Library under our Material Library tab. Here, we have many different options of 3D materials to download. This downloads the entire material, both the physics and texture map, in one file format. Once downloaded, we can toggle back to our Garment tab and assign different 3D fabrics to see how they look and drape. Lastly, you can create your own library of custom materials to use in 3D. This will be covered in a later video. That is an overview of 3D fabrics.
For more information, check out the Browseware Help Center.
In this video, we're going to explain how material resources and the context view work.
To the left of the 2D window are the resource tabs. Note the different tab sections in the resource tabs: 2D, Materials, 3D, and Params. In this video, we're going to focus on the Materials tab. On the far right of the screen is the context view. The information and options that are displayed here change depending on the material we select. Let's open a garment file to see these areas of the user interface in action. Below the Material tab are two other tab options: Garment and Libraries. The displayed content can change by clicking the tab we want to view. The Materials tab displays fabrics, seams, artworks, trims, and color libraries. The Colors in Use part shows us which colors we are using in the current garment colorway. In the Search field, we can look for materials that are in the file. We can change the look of the Garment tab by choosing List or Grid View. Clicking the icon next to the List and Grid View gives us options to change the size of the material thumbnails. In addition, we can choose to display the back side of the material. Let's go to the Libraries tab. With this feature, we can use Remote Asset Libraries, which helps to easily access new materials. vStitcher includes a Browseware Asset Library, a Genealogia Dry Finish Gallery, and a YKK Zipper Library. We can also create and add our own asset library. For information about that, check out the Browseware Help Center. To add materials from the library to the garment file, we simply click to download. The context view dynamically changes depending on the selected element. For example, if we select this fabric, we see its settings and properties in the context view. Here we can also change the color. We click on the color thumbnail. A color library is displayed, and we select the color we'd like to use. We can also look at material physics. If we select a material from the seams category, the content of the context view changes. Similarly, the details available in the context view change if we select an artwork or a trim. In this video, we've learned how material resources and the context view work. For more information, check out the Browseware Help Center.
In this tutorial, we cover which file types can be used when adding materials to a garment file. Materials are fabrics, seams, artwork, and trims. We can access the materials added to a file in the Garment part of the Resource tabs. Let's begin with fabrics. To add a fabric, we click the hamburger icon and then click Add Fabric. We can select several file formats. The most common file formats used are the following: U3M, which stands for Unified 3D Material, is an open source file format for all materials. This file format includes texture images and can include physics data. Then there are image-based file types such as PNG, JPEG, and many others. As an example, let's add fabric in the U3M file format. When we select the fabric, the context view displays its properties, including the material maps. For example, the diffuse map, which makes up the color of the fabric, and other PBR maps that make up the texture of the fabric. We can also view the physical properties of the fabric by selecting Physics. Next, let's add an image file like a JPEG. Here you can see that the only displayed map is the diffuse map, and it does not have any other PBR maps that make up the texture of the fabric. In addition, image files do not contain any physics, so loading the physics dialog box will show the fabric is of default physics. Next, we add a seam. In the software, a seam is an image or vector file that automatically repeats along an edge or internal line. When adding a seam, we have the choice between adding an externally created image or vector file, or creating a modifiable vector in the software. With the modifiable vector seam, you can create a variety of basic stitches. If the stitch you want is not available, you can bring in your own images. To add an image, we have the same choice of file types to select from as previously. The recommended non-vector image file type is PNG. Sometimes when adding a new seam, we need to adjust its size. The advantage of using a PNG image is the transparency of the background and the small file size. Next, we add an artwork. We have the same choice of file formats again. PNG and AI file formats are the most common. The benefit of using AI artwork is the colors of the vectors can be changed in the software. And finally, we'll look at trims. Trims are 2D or 3D decorative items. There are two types of trims: piece assignable, edge assignable. Piece assignable trims include elements such as buttons. Edge assignable trims include elements such as zippers. When adding a new piece assignable trim, the common file formats for 3D trims are OBJ and FBX. OBJ and FBX are 3D object file formats. We can use them to add personalized buttons, zipper pullers, or decorative trims like studs or pearls. When adding 2D trims, the common file types are PNG or AI. Now that we've shared the common file types for the different materials, we want to make a note that the file types that we have shared are supported by all material types. Here's a quick table to show all the supported file types for materials. We are also able to add materials we have used in another BW file. To recap, a BW file is a Browseware garment file format. It is a single file containing all relevant information about a garment, including the materials used. To do this, simply select a BW garment file. Within the menu that displays, you can add any existing materials from the file. In this video, you have learned what material file types you can use to add new material resources to a garment file. For more information, check out the Browseware Help Center.
In this video, we're going to show you how to use the vSetcher Assign tool. With the Assign tool, we can apply any type of material to our garment, whether it's a fabric, seam, trim, or artwork. We can assign materials to a piece, edge, or internal line. When we click the Assign tool on the main toolbar, the horizontal contextual menu displays all of the available options. Here it will display the selected material. We can click the icon to open a drop-down menu displaying all of the materials currently in use on this garment. This serves as a shortcut to quickly select other materials we'd like to assign. We select a seam thumbnail from the Resource tab, and with the Assign tool, click on a line or edge. To assign a material to a piece, we're doing the same. We select a fabric and click on the selected piece. If we want to assign the same material to multiple pieces, we may multi-select all of the pieces at once using a marquee selection. If we change our mind and would like to assign a different material, we can simply assign a new material on top of the existing material, and it is replaced. We can also identify where our materials are being used within a garment utilizing the Assign tool. If we select a material from the Resource tab with Assign tool, it will highlight all of the pieces or lines this material is assigned to in the 2D window. When we assign the same material to a new piece, it will be highlighted as well. We can do the same for seams, and they will be highlighted in green. Another way to assign material is by dragging and dropping it. Click on the icon of the material you would like to assign. Drag the icon over a piece, internal line, or edge where you'd like it to be assigned to in the 2D or 3D window. Release the icon to apply it. This action can be done with any tool selected. On the context view, You will see a message asking if you would like to replace all old with new on all elements. This will replace the material anywhere it is applied on the body. Last, we can also assign materials by replacing existing ones. To quickly replace a material, we can drag one material icon over another. This will replace the material wherever it is applied on the garment. Great! Now we know how to utilize the Assign tool and other methods for assigning materials. For more information, check out the Help Center. In this video, we're going to show you how to use the V-Stitcher Texture tool. When we select the Texture tool, the horizontal contextual menu displays all the available options. Using the Pieces option allows us to move the texture inside the pattern piece. We can also use this option to move an all-over print texture. Using the Internal option allows us to move the texture of artworks, seams, and trims. When we select the edge of a pattern, we can move the trim or seam along the edge. When the Outside option is selected, we can edit the outside texture of the garment. And when we switch to the Inside option, we can edit the inside texture of the garment. When we select the gizmo, it displays on the garment. We can use it to scale and rotate the texture. To rotate the texture, we select the small black circle on the gizmo and rotate it. Additionally, by holding down the Shift key, we can rotate at 45-degree angles. To scale the texture, we select the square bracket at the top right of the gizmo and drag. Note that by hiding the avatar, we can also adjust the textures on the back side of the garment. Remember that when using the Texture tool, the mouse cursor changes. When we're finished using this tool, we need to remember, for example, to switch to the Select tool. Another option is to view which material we have assigned to which pattern piece. If we select the Texture tool, then select a fabric, the pattern pieces with that material are highlighted in orange. We can do the same for seams and artwork, and they'll be highlighted in green. We can also do this in reverse. We can select a pattern piece, and the assigned material is highlighted on the Garments part of the Resources tab. Now you know how to use the Texture tool. For more information, check out the Browseware Help Center.
In this video, we're going to learn about fabrics. In previous lessons, we've showed that a 3D fabric is comprised of a texture image and the drape physics. In this lesson, we'll be discussing how to use fabrics. Fabrics can be found in the Materials Libraries tab of the left side resources. This is a cloud-based asset library that is included with the software. In this tab, we are able to search for and download materials by name utilizing the search bar, refresh the cloud source connection, and add a U3M material library. You can find more information on U3M materials and libraries in a separate video. To download a fabric from the library, we click on the image. When the cloud icon disappears, the fabric is ready for use in the Materials Garment tab. Once a fabric is downloaded from the cloud, it is stored in the cache and is saved locally for future use. When downloading a cached fabric, there will be a plus sign in the upper left corner. This icon will only show if you have downloaded the fabric previously. Check this to add the fabric to the garment. From the Garment tab, we are able to view the fabrics in use, fabrics not in use, and the back side of the fabric. When we hover over a fabric thumbnail, we can access more options in the hamburger menu. These options include clone fabric, rename, reset color, and more. Selecting clone fabric, a second icon of the fabric appears. We now have a copy of the fabric that can be adjusted separately. Remember, we can hide and show our materials in the 2D window. To use a fabric, we turn on our Assign tool, ensure we have selected the fabric thumbnail, then click on pattern pieces or parts of the garment to assign fabric accordingly. We can assign in 2D or 3D window. Since the fabric has changed, the garment drape will change. You will see the Dress button change to Update 3D button to notify you that the simulation is waiting to be updated. We need to click Dress to simulate the new fabric physics. It's a best practice to check the Dress button after a fabric change. The length of the simulation is determined by you. As a beginner, we suggest to wait a few seconds for the new drape to take effect before clicking Finish to end the simulation. For fabrics that we have downloaded from the asset libraries, the fabric physics have already been added. We can click the Physics button on the contextual menu to view the fabric physics. This dialog box shows the database that the fabric physics were added from, and all values that were derived from testing the fabric with the fab machine. These values determine fabric's drape and stretch. We do not recommend changing the values. We are also able to add fabrics via the hamburger icon on the Material Resources pane. Click Add Fabric, and we'll be able to select image or vector files like PNG, JPEG, AI, Photoshop, and TIFF, as well as U3M files saved on our computer. U3M files should be similar to downloaded assets from the asset libraries, meaning that it should already include the fabric textures and physics. When adding just an image or vector file as a fabric, the physics of the fabric will be default physics and the fabric will not drape as it would in real life. For example, if we add just a denim image as a fabric, the physics would not automatically be of denim physics. It would be default physics. We will then need to match the image to the correct physics for what we have available on our database. This will be covered in more detail in a separate video. We can see the fabric texture image is tiled or repeated to fill each pattern piece. Each fabric is comprised of the main image, diffuse, and corresponding texture maps to build a 3D visual in the simulation window. You can find more information about material maps in a separate video. Let's look at the texture options on the right side context menu. To view this menu, select a fabric thumbnail from the Material Resources tab using the Texture tool. The fabric has a face image and a back image, with the ability to adjust each separately. To copy the image and maps from face to back, we select this arrow, and to do the same with the opposite arrow to copy from back to face. We can also adjust the material's transparency. The Advanced Options section is related to material maps, which we cover in a separate video. The first section allows us to apply a fur effect to our materials. We will cover this function in detail in a later video. Here's one last tip to remember. A simulated garment requires the pattern piece to have a fabric assigned. If we remove a fabric that is currently used, we will not be able to see the garment in the 3D window until a new fabric is assigned to those pieces. In this video, you've learned how to use fabrics. For more information, check out the Browseware Help Center.
In this video, we're going to learn about seams. A seam is an image texture that is attached to and automatically repeats along the edge of a piece or internal line. Seams can be found in the Materials Garment tab Seam Category drop-down menu of the left side Resources. These seams are created as vector files. Additional seams can be found in the Libraries tab under Seams and Trims. When we hover over a seam thumbnail, we can access more information in the drop-down menu. These options include clone the seam, rename, reset color, and more. We'll use clone later in the video to create a new seam variation. Let's assign this seam to our garment. For seams, it is recommended to use the Assign tool as it is more direct on small areas like an edge. We can see the seam texture image is repeating along the line. Let's look at the texture options in the right side context menu. To view this menu, select a seam thumbnail from the Material Resources tab using the Texture tool. The texture has a face image and a back image, with the ability to adjust each separately. To copy the image and maps from face to back, we select this arrow and do the same with the opposite arrow to copy from back to face. Just like with the fabric, we can easily change the color. In the context view, we go to the Workmanship section, which shows us seam and thread options, all of which we can edit. We'll start with seam properties: offset, line count, distance. Offset allows us to specify the distance from the edge of the pattern piece. For example, if we want the seam to be 1 inch from the edge, we type in 1 inch for offset. Line count is the number of times the seam is repeated along the edge. Since this is a double needle, the line count is 2. Distance is the space between the seams. For example, we want less space between the seams, so we type in 0.15 for distance. Now we'll look at thread properties: length, width, space, 3D thickness. Length and width are the length and width of the seam material image. Note that we can set these properties individually, or we can click the link icon so that the changes to either length or width are automatically and proportionately implemented. For example, if length and width are linked and we increase the length, the width is automatically increased, and so on. Length can be adjusted in SPI, SPC, or your system unit preferences. Space is the distance between each stitch image. Thickness is the thread thickness. Thickness can be adjusted in text, ticket, metric, denier, or your system unit preferences. "3D thickness is a legacy property used to wrap a solid image around a pattern piece edge. A use case for 3D thickness would be a binding image. Each seam texture is comprised of the main image, diffuse, and corresponding texture maps to build a 3D visual in the simulation window. The advanced option is related to material maps, which we cover in a separate video. The first section allows us to apply a fur effect to our materials. We will cover this function in detail in a later video. To use the same seam a different distance from edge, we'll clone the seam and change the distance from edge. When two seams meet, we can specify their alignment using corner seam alignment options. Using Select tool, select the corner point where the seams meet. On the right-hand context menu, choose which corner seam alignment option is correct for your garment. The first option is Overlap. Overlap 1 places the first seam over the second seam. Overlap 2 places the second seam over the first seam. The second option is Cover. Cover 1 hides the first seam with the second seam. Cover 2 hides the second seam with the first seam. The third option is Meet. This option tapers both seams to meet at the corner equally. To remove any assigned seam, right-click on the line where it is applied and choose Remove Seam. In this video, you've learned about seams. For more information, check out the Browseware Help Center. In this video, we're going to learn about artwork. Artwork is an image that can be applied anywhere within the garment. These can be graphic motifs and full repeat art. Acceptable file formats are photographs and vectors. When we hover over an artwork thumbnail, we can access more options in the drop-down menu, such as clone the artwork, rename, reset color, and more. Remember, we can hide and show our material textures in the 2D window. To use an artwork texture, we turn on our Assign tool, ensure we have the chosen artwork selected in the resources, then click where we would like this artwork. We can assign in 2D or 3D window. We can see the artwork image is stamped on our garment. Let's look at the texture options in the right side context menu. To view this menu, select an artwork thumbnail from the Material Resources tab using the Texture tool. The texture has a face image and a back image with the ability to adjust each separately. Vector artwork will allow us to change each individual color within the image. Use the reset icon to reset color chip back to the original color. The advanced options section is related to material maps, which we cover in a separate video. The first action allows us to apply a fur effect to our materials. We'll cover this section in detail in a later video. Let's look at a favorite feature of artwork in the 2D window. If we select the artwork using the Select tool, handles will appear. These indicate the placement amount from one end to the artwork. We can even move the handles inside the artwork and along the pattern edge to customize the measurement point. Once the handle placement is set, select the artwork from the 2D or 3D window. On the right side context view, Transformation, we can use the position X and position Y to place the graphic. We can also scale the graphic in your system measurement preferences or in percentage. We can clone our artwork to create a different scale or color of our artwork. We can also turn an artwork into an all-over print. Assign the print to the pattern piece where we want the all-over print. Select the artwork in 2D or 3D under Actions, find All-Over Print. The artwork will be grouped with the pattern piece material to create an all-over print. Choose Replace All to replace all with New on all elements. Finally, to remove an artwork, select the artwork, then press Delete on your keyboard. In this video, you've learned about artwork. For more information, check out the Browsware Help Center. In this video, we're going to learn about trims. There are two function types of trims, piece assignable and edge assignable. A piece assignable trim can be added as an internal element anywhere within the garment. An edge assignable trim can be added along any line. 3D trims can be found in the Materials Library tab of the left side resources. This is a cloud-based asset library that is included with the software. In this lesson, we'll be discussing 2D trims. You can find more information on 3D trims in a separate video. A 2D trim is an image of a trim. To add a trim, we're going to open the hamburger menu from the Trim section. Let's add a piece assignable trim. Acceptable file formats are photographs and vectors. From the Garment tab, we are able to view trim in use, trim not in use, and the backside of the trim. When we hover over a trim thumbnail, we can access more options in the hamburger menu, such as clone the trim, rename, reset color, and more. Remember, we can hide and show our material textures in the 2D window. To use a trim texture, we turn on our Assign tool. Ensure we have the chosen trim selected in the resources, then click where we'd like this trim. We can assign in the 2D or 3D window. We can see that the trim texture image is stamped onto our garment. Now let's add an edge assignable trim. We can see that the trim texture image is repeated along the line. Each trim texture is comprised of the main image, diffuse, and corresponding texture maps to build a 3D visual in the simulation window. You can find more information about material maps in a separate video. Let's look at the texture options in the right side context view. To view this menu, select a trim thumbnail from the Material Resources tab using the Texture tool. The texture has a face image and a back image, with the ability to adjust each separately. To copy the images and maps from face to back, we select this arrow. And do the same with the opposite arrow to copy from back to face. With edge-assignable trims, we are also able to add some workmanship properties to the texture, seam properties, and thread properties. The Advanced Options section is related to material maps, which we cover in a separate video. The Information section allows you to add text metadata to this fabric. This info is part of our TechPack export, which we will cover in another video. To remove a piece assignable trim, select the trim, then press Delete on your keyboard. To remove an edge assignable trim, right-click on the line which it is assigned and select Remove Seam. In this video, we've learned trims. For more information, check out the Browseware Help Center.
In a previous video, we explained that U3M is one of the file formats that can be used when adding materials to a garment file. In this video, we want to discuss U3M file format in depth. U3M stands for Unified 3D Material and is an open source file format for digital materials. The intent of this file format is to remove the need for proprietary file formats in favor of one agnostic file type. A standard U3M file contains the following elements: a folder that contains all of the texture images related to the image. This includes the base material images as well as, in many cases, supporting PBR maps such as a normal map. We'll cover these maps in greater detail later in the curriculum. A main U3M file that is used to load the material into the software. Lastly, the file can also include the physics testing results. These will be included if the physics information was paired with the material prior to the U3M export. In other words, if we were to export a fabric as a U3M file, it would consist of all of the textures that make up the look of the material, plus the physics which determines how the material drapes, both elements which make up a fabric. This U3M file can then be shared with other users, so they utilize the fabric on vStitcher as well. For U3M files, there are two different formats. The first is a folder structure that gives us visibility to the files and folders. The second is an archived version of this folder that compresses the file into a single file, also known as U3MA. The benefits of using the U3MA format is that because the file is compressed, it's slightly smaller than the U3M folder structure. Additionally, since it is a single file, the risk of corruption is much lower. In this video, you've learned the U3M basics. For more information, check out the Browseware Help Center.
In this video, we will cover how we can access our materials globally within vStitcher using asset libraries. An asset library is a group of materials that can include fabrics, seams, artwork, and 2D and/or 3D trims. Here we have a finished style, and it includes a few materials we want to use on other garments. To create a library including this group of materials, we select File on our main menu. Then we select Export Material Library. Any material present in the Material Resources tab in this file will be exported into the library. The library is automatically named based on the current colorway. Let's rename the library for better recognition. Currently, this library is saved on the desktop. However, for ease of use, we can also save this to a shared drive for multiple users to access at one time. Now we'll add these exported materials as an asset library into VStitcher. To do this, we navigate to the Libraries in our Material Resources tab. Then we select the hamburger menu and add Library. Once the library folder has been selected, we can see all the materials in our library. A huge benefit of utilizing asset libraries is that they only need to be added once, and then those materials are quickly and easily accessible from any file open in VStitcher. Now we can add these materials to a new style. To add a material to our garment, we simply hover over the material and click on the cloud icon. Additionally, if we'd like to add all the materials from a category, we can select the cloud icon at the top right of the header bar. When we navigate back to the Garment tab, we can see all our materials that can now be used on this garment. Next, we're going to see how to add a material to an existing asset library. Using the hamburger menu within a material icon, we can select Export as U3M. We can add the exported U3M into an asset library folder. To quickly locate the library folder, we can navigate to the library within the Library Sources drop-down and select External Resources. Looks like the new material is not quite visible yet. To view the new material, we simply refresh the library. For any material we have downloaded previously, you will notice the cloud icon is not visible. This means the material has been downloaded previously and is currently being stored locally on your machine in the background. To add a material in this state, simply hover over the material icon and select the plus sign. To remove the locally cached material files, we use the hamburger menu and select Clear Cache. In this video, we've learned how to create our own custom asset library. For more information, check out the Browseware Help Center.
In this video, we're going to show how to add materials to a new style. Let's start by going to the Garment section on the Resource tabs. Here we can see the 4 types of materials that can be part of a garment: fabrics, seams, artwork, trims. We can assign material to a pattern piece or edge. We can assign material by dragging it. Alternatively, we can use the Assign tool. Note that we can assign material on the 2D or 3D window. When we click on a material on the Resource tabs, the context view on the right displays the material's properties and settings. Note that the properties and settings vary depending on the material type selected. To add a new material, we go to the Libraries. From the drop-down menu, we can add one of the available libraries. We're going to focus on the Browseware library. We click on a material to download it. To have it accessible, we're going to go back to the Garment tab. From here, we can assign it to a pattern piece. Let's look in more detail at materials, starting with a fabric. Each fabric has a front and back image. Images can be in JPG, PNG, or AI format. In addition, fabrics have different texture maps such as diffuse, specular, normal, and others.
We'll cover this topic in a separate video. For now, it's enough to know that the diffuse map is an image of the texture. Next to it is the color thumbnail, which shows the fabric color. Here we can also change the color. By clicking on the color thumbnail, a color picker is displayed and we can select the color we'd like to use. We can save the color to the palette so it's available for repeated use. If we want to change back to the original color, we can click the Reset Diffuse button. To clone this fabric, we select the fabric, click the hamburger icon, and click Clone Fabric. A clone or copy of the fabric is added to the available fabrics. Now that we have our color in place, let's review seams. First, we're going to add a new seam. In the drop-down menu, we have multiple seam options which we can choose from. These seams are created as vector files. Alternatively, we can also create our own seam design and import it. Let's assign the seam to our garment. For seams, it is recommended to use the Assign tool as it is more accurate on small areas like an edge. By clicking on a seam on the Resource tabs, we can see the seam's properties in the context view. Just like with the fabric, we can easily change the color. In the context view, we go to the Workmanship section, which shows us seams and thread properties, all of which we can edit. We'll start with seam properties: offset, line count, distance. Offset allows us to specify the distance from the edge of the pattern piece. For example, if we want the seam to be 1.5 centimeters from the edge, we type in 1.5 for offset. Line count is the number of times the seam is repeated along the edge. For example, if we want 2 lines showing the seam, we type in 2 for line count. This way, we can turn a single needle seam into a double needle seam. Distance is the space between seams. For example, we want a little more space between the seams, so we type in 0.5 for distance. Now we'll look at thread properties: length, width, space, and 3D thickness. Length and width are the length and width of the seam material image. Note we can set these properties individually, or we can click the link icon so that changes to either length or width are automatically and proportionately implemented. For example, if length and width are linked, and we increase the length, the width is automatically increased, and so on. Space is the distance between each stitch image. "3D thickness" is a legacy property for older garment files. Now we know how to edit a seam. Let's look at artwork. To add an artwork, we click the hamburger menu in the Artwork section, then click Add Artwork. We'll assign the artwork to our garment. We can easily change the color. When we click the artwork, either in the 2D or 3D window, we can scale and rotate it using the Gizmo tool. In the 2D window, there are rulers that indicate the position of the artwork. As we drag the artwork to a new location, the rulers show the exact distance from the selected edge. Now we know all about materials and how to add them to a new style. In this video, we learned in depth about materials. For more information, check out the Browseware Help Center. In this video, we're going to learn about managing materials in our garment file. Each material icon represents one unique material. When a change is made to the source material, all instances of the applied material will be updated. We can use assets already created in the file to efficiently create a new variation of a material. Cloning will copy all current material settings. Rename the cloned material to distinguish it from the original material. Selecting the cloned material, you can make the changes needed, such as changing the distance from edge for a seam, creating two different sizes of the same artwork, or creating a second color of the same fabric. We can reorder icons inside of each category to organize our Material tab for easy viewing. Icons can be moved between the Seam, Artwork, and Trims category by dragging and dropping. This can be useful for grouping elements or reorganizing how a material can be applied, such as an edge assignable versus a piece assignable trim. A material that is in use has a check in the lower right corner of the icon. When hovering over a colors in use color chip, the check will highlight in yellow, showing all materials where this color is applied. When hovering over a material icon, the icon will expand to show options. A material that is assigned to the garment has a minus in the upper left corner. The minus can be used to remove all instances of the material from where it is applied on the garment. Once the material is no longer applied to the garment, the X can be used to delete the material from the garment file. We recommend removing unused materials throughout the garment creation process, as well as when the garment is completed. Removing the unused materials helps maintain file size. You can delete each icon using the X in the upper left corner, or you can delete all unused per category. To do this, select the drop-down menu of the category and choose Delete Unused Materials. In this video, you've learned useful methods for managing materials. For more information, check out the Browseware Help Center.